Hey everybody, welcome to the webinar. We're going to start in about 90 seconds just to give people a chance to file in. And while they're shuffling in, maybe you could just try the chat. Maybe let us know what city you're calling from in the chat. There's Sarah from Houston. And Ed, where are you today?
Where I always am, Dario, where I always am. I was going to say somebody has to type in Asbury Park, New Jersey, just so it says that.
There we go.
I can't type it in, so you have to type it in for me.
John from Annapolis, Maryland. Welcome, John.
I love Annapolis. God, that's a beautiful
I
town.
do too.
Yeah. I'm not a boatie. I'm not a boat guy, but I love Annapolis.
I love seafood.
Have you been to the Naval Academy?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
There's Allison Reed from Yardley.
Another beautiful. Yeah.
Give it another 30 seconds or so here, Ed. People are still coming in.
Sure.
Okay, still more people, which is great.
Always good.
Well, why don't we get started?
All right.
Good, Ed?
I'm ready.
Yeah, let's officially welcome everybody to today's webinar. I'm thrilled that you're all here as we dive into a critical topic, one that we're really excited about, and it's on coaching and its impact on commercial performance in the life sciences industry. And today's conversation is going to focus on how the industry is evolving and how coaching can help navigate these challenges. My name is Dario Priolo, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Echelon. And I'm joined by our CEO and founder, Ed McCarthy, who I will introduce in a second. But first, some housekeeping matters, just so everybody knows. The webinar is being recorded, and we will distribute the recording to you after we're done. So, if you want to take notes, that's great, but just know that you'll have the recording to refer back to. And secondly, if you could, please use the chat if you have any questions at any time, and we'll try to answer these in real time, or we will definitely get to them at the end during Q&A. And with that, I'm just pleased to introduce Ed McCarthy. Ed?
Dario, it is so good to see you, even though it's virtually, but thanks for the introduction. Before we dive in, I'll just share a little bit about Echelon and sort of our founding and our mission. So I started the company in 2006, which at once seems like yesterday, and it also seems like 100 years ago. But originally, we were really dedicated to decoding what it takes to be a high performer in the pharmaceutical and life sciences industry. So when we say that, I mean in terms of sales, representatives, first-line managers, second-line managers, and so forth. And it's funny, I was even thinking today that a lot of what we're going to talk about during this session was true back then, right? With regard to change and macro changes going on in the industry. So it all feels very relevant, as it did back in the beginning. And what we're talking about today in terms of coaching has really been a huge focus for us over the last 15 years, really trying to understand and decode how top performing managers, first line, second line, what do they do differently when it comes to coaching, and how do they actually create business impact through their skills and behaviors?
Awesome. Let's go for it.
Cool.
So over the next 30 minutes, what we're going to do, we're going to explore some key industry challenges in the biopharma industry. We'll share 4 best practices for coaching that we've identified through our research and, as Ed mentioned, years and years of experience. And then finally, what we're going to do is discuss how to build a coaching culture that sticks in your organization. And we've got some amazing tools and resources that we're going to share with you, just really help you accelerate your progress there. So this is a crucial time of the year. I know a number of you are probably in the thick of strategy planning and budgeting for 2025. So let's get in with some valuable takeaways that can guide your teams moving forward. Let's just start by framing the industry landscape. The one constant in life is change. And based on our research and work with dozens of commercial leaders in biopharma, we've identified 4 major challenges that will define the coming year. The first one is around pricing pressure and value-based care. So this is largely driven by recent legislation, such as the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, we're not going to get political, but it is an election year. And obviously, that's always a disruptive time. And one of the major focuses is really on managing the cost of care. And it's putting significant pressure on pharma and biotech companies to adapt. And this is not going to go away. Managing these cost pressures are going to be an ongoing challenge for all of us. The second one here is around innovation and AI. So innovation is at the forefront of everything that we do, and AI has become a complete game changer. So from drug discovery to commercialization, AI is revolutionizing our industry, and those who embrace it will have a competitive advantage. Next comes digital medicine and access. So the way we gain access to decision makers has changed dramatically, and we actually recently had a roundtable discussion with a number of commercial leaders, and what we heard from them is that gaining access to decision makers was their top challenge. So the buying process you're going to see here has become more complex, and that's driven by the next bullet point here around consolidation and private equity. But the bottom line is that traditional sales approaches in biopharma is evolving, and there's much more emphasis now on digital and omni-channel strategies to reach the right people. And with all of this consolidation, what we're seeing is that it's really having a transformational effect on how these companies operate. And as organizations merge or get acquired, it creates a ripple effect on commercial teams and their strategies. So with that said, we'd love to get some insights from you. We're going to open a poll. So please select which of these challenges you're seeing most in your organization. You can select all of that apply. You can select one, or you can select more. But we would really love to hear from you and see from you, what challenges you're seeing and what's really sort of shaping some of the narrative around your strategy as you go into 2025. Ooh, getting some nice results popping up here. I love how this shows up, Ed.
It's really, I was just thinking to myself, it's really cool when you see all the things start to add up. It's one of the joys of being a presenter. It's like, oh, that's so cool.
It is. Okay, we've got 15 out of 20.
Right.
This is great. We have a quorum, Ed.
Quorum. Great.
Okay, cool. Well, it looks like we've sort of topped out here. Yeah, let's share the results. So let's take a look at pricing pressure, 33%, AI, 40%. Reduced access to providers, that's the number one, 67%. Any surprises here, Ed, from your perspective?
You know what, Dario? I think AI is a little bit higher than I thought. You probably feel different because you're really an expert in that area. But I'll say this, I would have been really surprised if reduced access was not number one. I would have been, we'll talk more about that later.
Absolutely.
But we have discussions about that all the time. So that's a really good look. Thank you for putting your answers in there.
Yes, thanks everybody. Okay, let's move on here. Okay, going to share the results. Now we're going to stop sharing. So we've just covered some of the major challenges facing the life sciences industry. And while high-level industry challenges are significant, their true impact is really felt directly by your field teams. And the success of your commercial organization hinges on how well your teams can adapt and thrive under these new conditions. Let's move into talking about some of these macro-level challenges to the specific skills and behaviors now that your field teams need to develop in order to succeed. So Ed, let me turn this over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Dario. And I think it's, as I was going to say before, that you've really put together a comprehensive list when we talk about the factors that are impacting the business of the people who are on this webinar. And sometimes it just feels like there's just change. We're sort of caught up in this maelstrom of change. But it's important, like you did there, to really step back and isolate, okay, what's really happening? What is causing all of this change? And the flip side of that is to really start to understand the impact of change on our frontline salespeople in the field. And just for the sake of this conversation, we're going to use a model that we've used here at Echelon for quite a long time. But from our research, from the work that we've done with top performing field salespeople, we know that people who are top performers excel in more than just, and I hate to say just, but customer engagement is always going to be king, right? That ability to engage somebody one-on-one. But top performers actually work at a high level in 4 different areas. So before we get into the specific changes in that area, let's just walk through the 4 at a high level. So number 1 is right there, it's planning. Number 2 is access and account navigation. Number 3 is collaboration. And then number 4, and I kind of tipped my hand to this before, is customer engagement. So even though those 4 are still really set, it's what's happening really underneath the hood of those that we really need to start to pay attention to in regards to developing our people. So let's start with planning. And Dario, you know this as well as I do. Business planning, territory planning, account planning have been part of representative training for as long as I can remember. But more and more, the changes that are going on in the industry are driving a need for better business acumen. And when we talk about business acumen, it's really, there's sort of 2 facets to it. The first one is, how well does your representative understand the context into which they're selling, right? How do they actually understand the decision-making dynamics within an account, within an office, within the individual? That's the first part. But then the second part is, do they understand the impact of what the change that they're asking for on that dynamic? So we're asking people to change the way they treat patients, maybe the way they even identify appropriate patients. What is that change going to have? What impact is that change going to have on that site of care? And the term that we use, as you can see it there, is CFO. And that's not like think like a CFO or call on the CFO. It's clinical, financial, and operational. And we really need to start paying attention to the impact. If we're all feeling change here, all of our customers, our clients, our accounts are feeling change over there too. And the more that we can align with what they're going through, the better off we're going to be.
Yeah, especially if you think back to some of the macro level influences, right, around, cost containment and pressure driven by legislation, consolidation. I mean, it really does put a whole lot more onus on the rep to be much more sophisticated, right, to be able to speak to a broad range of issues to a broad range of stakeholders.
Yeah, good point. Really good point. The second one, and everybody, I'm so glad everybody said gaining access was a big one, because I would have looked silly if it hadn't come up. But I think gaining access is one of the biggest issues facing frontline salespeople and their managers, of course, in this dynamic right now. And I think I've said at one of our meetings this week, I think the number is close to 60%. In the poll, it was 67% of the organizations and field teams that we work with, where this is a huge barrier. And when it comes to coaching, we'll get into this in a bit, you can't just say, well, you need better access. We need to start thinking about coaching to the skills that result in better access, enumerating those skills and then coaching to those skills.
Well, I think what's interesting about this is that I think traditionally access was really around, a rep getting access to a physician. But now that the decision-making dynamic is changing, they have to get access to a whole host of stakeholders potentially, not just the physician. And these stakeholders all have sort of, different issues, right? Different needs, different priorities. It really causes them to have to be multifaceted.
Yeah, it really does. And sometimes the people who you really need to gain access to are really not even decision makers. They're more influencers. So there's a lot of shifting dynamics in that sense. The next one, we didn't put it up in the list of changes because it's sort of an impact. It's an impact on commercial teams. But what we have seen really over the last few years, and a trend that is definitely going to continue, is a shift to a commercial model that has a smaller number of salespeople. Like I was telling you the other day, we have a client now that I think they have 30 salespeople covering 50 states.
Wow.
So your commercial teams are smaller, they're more efficient, they're more specialized, they're more targeted. They focus on, more complex disease states. And representatives in that setting are more collaborative. The good ones, the top performing ones, are more collaborative because in the field with them, even though they might be the only person in Utah, there's probably somebody who's in patient services. There's probably an MSL that is also in the field with them. And really, top representatives work closely with those people to create this cohesive story around patients and appropriate therapy for them.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, it's interesting because, again, as the buying process has gotten more complex and the stakeholders sort of more vast, the need to bring in specialists, right? I mean, it's almost like the rep is playing like this, a coordinating or quarterbacking, however you want to sort of describe the role, but that's hugely important. You can't be an expert in everything.
No, nor should you try to be.
Yeah.
Right. Really focus on what you do well. And then the last piece, again, is customer engagement. And as I said before, customer engagement to engage and really, create momentum in the sales process one-on-one is the cornerstone of sales in this industry. And all the things that are in that gold box are still important: call planning, cohesive value, messaging, using the visual aid, handling objections. All those things really matter. But representatives today, top representatives, are as compelling and engaging on multiple platforms as they are in person, right? Doctors got really comfortable not seeing representatives during COVID. And now in a lot of cases, and this kind of ties to the box above, gaining access. Maybe the only access I have to a physician or a decision maker is through a Zoom. Well, you have to be just as compelling and engaging and do all the right things like you did in the field, even if you're going to talk to somebody through your computer.
Well, and that's a massive change. And if you think about, a number of these pharma companies have, whatever, very tenured sales forces, right? I mean, you may have someone that's been there for 20, 25 years. And, when they kind of came up the ranks, I mean, things were done a certain way. I mean, they were calling on doctors, it was face to face. And now, I mean, they have to work in a very different way.
Yeah, they really, really do. So those are the four I wanted to make sure that we called out as part of this discussion. There are more. Others have, elevated in terms of importance, but those are four that we consistently see in terms of top performing representatives, and we also talk a lot about with client organizations.
Awesome. So, I mean, that's great, Ed. I mean, you identified all these key new skills and behaviors to kind of address all the change. And we know that, these are not necessarily small steps. In some cases, there's sort of, incremental change. In other cases, it's a very, very big change. And it just begs the question. I mean, coaching obviously seems very important, but like, why coaching and why now?
Yeah. I will give you a three-part answer. The first two I have data for. The last bullet I don't, but I'm really passionate about it. So the first one is that coaching is a mission critical function of a manager. And we know through our analyses, through our studies, through our work, that there is a 90% correlation between managers that deliver highly effective coaching who are also high performers. So the overall effectiveness of coaching is nearly a direct correlation to somebody's performance in terms of their role as a first-line manager. The second bullet, or the subset of that bullet, is that even small improvements in coaching effectiveness can and should be measured. So even small incremental gains in coaching effectiveness have a correlative impact on business results. Everything from market share, representative productivity, things like engagement, things like retention. If you're in a competitive setting and you're losing people, coaching can play a huge role in keeping good people on your team. And then the last thing is, my last bullet is anecdotal because you said it. And that is that coaching today, like we're in a real interesting time in our industry. Different pressures, all these changes. And you have a lot of people who have seen a lot of things, right? Representatives with 10, 15, 20 plus years in the field. They work for 3, 4, 5 different pharmaceutical companies. They've kind of seen it and done it all. And it's a trap. Yeah, to the Star Wars quote there. It's a bit of a trap because you don't want to start thinking, well, I got this. Because over the years, skills have to grow. And when the market is changing like this, skills need to continue to grow. And even if a representative isn't ready to say, yeah, I need to get better with business acumen, as a manager, as somebody who is carrying the mantle for somebody's professional development, you need to be in tune with those things and help guide them through the growth and momentum that comes with coaching.
Well, it's really interesting because I think, most of us would agree that we should coach, but oftentimes it just doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen very well, or it doesn't happen consistently. So let's just pause for a moment here and let's pop up the next poll here. And this is around obstacles to coaching. So to the audience, what do you think are the biggest challenges affecting coaching in your organization? And if you could take a moment, please, and respond to the poll, we would really appreciate it. Yep, here we got some coming. Always that nervous moment, right, Ed?
Did everybody go get coffee? You're seeing responses.
There we go.
Keep
Keep
them
them coming.
coming.
Keep them coming. This is great. Give everyone one more minute here. Yep. Oh. Still trickling in. One more second. Okay, we're at the 1 minute mark here. So interesting here. Let's look at lack of time, competing priorities, 47%. This is interesting, limited buy-in from senior leadership, 53%.
Yeah, that's surprising, I find. Resistance from employees being coached. Huh.
Oh, yeah.
Slow down. Yeah, I would not have guessed that the limited buy-in from senior leadership would be number one. Would not.
Yeah, you wonder what they're thinking.
Yes.
Anyway, it's very good perspective. Thanks everybody for your participation in this. This is hugely helpful for us as we continue to shape our offerings going forward. Okay, share the results. Stop sharing. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide here.
Next. All right. When the polls pop up, I have to click back in. So here we go.
So we've looked at the broader industry challenges. Let's shift our focus now to coaching, specifically, how can coaching address some of these pain points and improve commercial performance? So Ed, let me turn this over to you. This is really your wheelhouse.
It's my wheelhouse, but it's very much I'll move out of the anecdotal mode and talk about some studies that we've done over the last year to really the goal was really to I think it's to make coaching and the development of leaders in coaching more tangible, more practical. So we really wanted to identify what are those behaviors, coaching behaviors, the top performing managers leverage to produce an impact on their business. Like we said, there's a 90% correlation between the managers that do these things and the ones that are going on President's Club every year. So we wanted to make that number manageable and very practical in terms of bringing coaching and best practices in coaching into your organization. So the study included, probably more than 24 commercial teams, coaching conversations, field coaching reports, interviews, and so forth. But really the net is that there are 4 behaviors that top performing managers leverage when it comes to creating impact. And we'll go through each of those 4. So the first one is, and if the power goes out or LinkedIn goes down or whatever, if you don't remember anything else from this conversation, remember this. Top performing managers are almost 70% more likely to focus their coaching on skills that support commercial strategy. So coaching starts with a focus on skills. And I want to drill down into that just for a second, because I know you all represent different types of organizations, but we work with a lot of larger organizations that have established coaching and leadership development platforms and practices. And in those settings, those managers have the ability to dial into their coaching report, go through training, whatever it might be, and they get exposed to the skills that support commercial strategy, whether that's brand strategy, whether that's sales strategy, maybe it's a selling model. all of those skills end up in a rubric that ends up in their coaching report. So they're right there and they take advantage of that. But also the thing that I find really interesting about this is even with teams that didn't have a fixed rubric, so there was no, they might have a POA, but there's not necessarily a translation to skills, or they don't have a selling model, they don't have a competency model. Those managers still coach the skills when they're doing their coaching. And I just felt I had this moment of like, I think that just top performing managers have a veil that they almost observe things through, and they see the skills that people are practicing and are able to then dive into that.
Yeah, and I think when you connect it to commercial strategy, then it makes more sense to people. It's really the why, right? When I think there's a strong why and people understand it, they're more likely to buy into it. And then then you're more likely to be aligned and more likely to execute on a regular basis because you see this as really a key success factor.
Absolutely. It is the number one critical success factor from my perspective in terms of coaching, is focus on skills that support strategy. Yep. And to your point, Dario, there's a huge why, right? If we're supporting the growth of the business, supporting the growth of the individual, it's a win-win. So it really does start here. Doesn't end here, it starts here. Yep. Second one, best practice number 2. So the key word for the first best practice is focus. Focus on skill. The second key word for best practice number 2 is momentum. Top performing managers do not fall into the Groundhog Day trap where every field visit and coaching conversation just kind of feels like every other one that came before that. And they do that by leveraging skill development goals. And I'll give you a little bit of the numbers, but then I'll give you an example. So top performing managers are twice as likely to have articulated and coached to long-term skill development goals. And I'll dive into that in a second. They're also 3 times as likely to have short-term skill development goals. And I'll explain what that is in a second. So long-term goals, top performing managers they use what we call continuity. They focus on a skill or skills, and they coach to that and grow that and create momentum in that skill over time, 3, 4, 5 months, whatever it might be. So what do you need to do that? Number 1, you need to have a clear understanding of where that person is today in a given skill. You need to have a clear understanding of where you want that person to be or where they want to be in that skill in order to impact the business. And then you need the next step, which is a short-term goal. Would you like me to go further on that? One example, maybe?
Yeah, let's bring that to life with an example, Ed.
Right. So as you probably know, if anybody is on the call who knows me, I like to get on my soapbox. I get on my soapbox about a lot of stuff. And one of those things is call planning. Call planning is such a mission critical skill for representatives. So let's talk about call planning. If I'm a manager and Dario is my representative, I might have a conversation that goes something like this. So Dario, we've been talking a lot about call planning and its importance. And over the course of the morning, I've seen you do a couple of things that I really like, right? You're developing call plans, you're thinking about what messages you want to deliver, you're thinking about the resources that you want to support those with. But over time, in order to really make an impact on calls that you're going on, we're going to need to go deeper and we're going to need to go broader. So let's say over the next 3 months, here's where I want you to get to. I want to make sure that you're doing call planning, not just for your highest level offices, your highest level HCPs. I want you to think about some of the mid-tier and maybe even some of your lower tier physicians who you could really grow and do call planning in those instances as well. But also, I want you to start thinking broader. I want you to think about what besides my messages and resources do I need to think about? You need to think about what am I going to learn? You need to think about what commitment am I going to ask for? So between where we are today and where we want to get to, let's focus on that. We'll make that the focus of our coaching. That's a long-term goal.
Yep.
You don't have to say that every day. Like, let's establish that goal because what you want to focus on is short-term goals. So Dario, we're going to spend the day together tomorrow. It looks like you have a really good day lined up for us. For 4 of those 7 calls, tonight, tomorrow morning, I want you to develop a really good call plan that focuses on questions, that focuses on resources, focuses on commitments. And we'll go over that first thing tomorrow and make that our guiding principle for tomorrow. That's a short.
Yeah. Nice. Nice.
Yeah. That was a long way of saying best practice number 2, wasn't it?
It's all good, Ed.
The clock here. So best practice number 3, I'll do it more succinctly, is managers engage their people. And I would say that as an industry, we've done better with this. We have been more engaging. We spend more time asking good questions, listening during coaching visits. The best practice is that top performing managers engage their team before, during, and after a coaching session. So I'll put them all up together. Like I said, during the coaching session, field visits, we're getting better, right? We see more role playing. We see more skill modeling. We see, in some cases, some better listening, some more EI. But before and after, there are opportunities too. Before, even what I was just saying about skill goals, you can engage somebody in their own development by co-creating skill goals. You can review coaching from last time together, right? We always say, oh, review the FCR from the last call. Well, review it with the representative. What could be more impactful? And then afterward, the goal is to, continue that coaching, continue that momentum, and really start to think about how can this person, Dario, if I'm coaching you, Dario, how can you expand your knowledge, your ability on your own time, right? I'm with you somewhere between 2 and 5 days a quarter. How can you help yourself and take ownership of your own development? And I can help you with that as well.
Awesome.
Finally, best practice number 4 is all around creating what we call the coaching biome. So I'll keep this short and sweet, but how do we elevate the conversation around coaching and skill development, right? If we limit it to just field visits, we're really doing a huge disservice. We meet and talk and text, and we're exchanging with our team members all the time. So how do we take advantage of those opportunities, whether they're team meetings, whether they're regional meetings, maybe one-on-ones, even just some of the digital platforms that we have? How do we start to elevate skill development to that same level, or maybe just below the same level of conversation that we have around performance? Make sense?
Absolutely.
Do you want to jump ahead and talk about?
Yeah, let's talk about building this coaching culture here, Ed. I mean, again, it's not enough to coach here and there. You really need a structure, right, that embeds coaching into your organization's DNA. It's like you described with the coaching biome. So let's get into some of the tools and resources that we have here that I think are going to be really helpful for people. And the first one that we have is called the Sales Coaching Cultural Assessment. So this is something that we developed, and it's a simple self-assessment. There are 15 questions that help you gauge where your organization stands in terms of a coaching culture. And the goal here is to help you understand where you are now and what steps you need to take to improve. And we'll provide access to this tool after the webinar. And there's the QR code here. You can scan the QR code. It's going to take you to a web form. If you fill out that web form, you'll get access to the tools. And I highly encourage you to use it to see how coaching can be better integrated into your day-to-day operations. Ed, do you want to talk a little bit more about the coaching cultural assessment?
I do, because I love it. Dario developed this, and I tell him every time that I think about it, it's a great tool. And it is. I think a lot of organizations, when it comes to coaching, we talked earlier about what are some of the impediments to a coaching culture before, and it's creating that buy-in, right? It's a lot of it is creating buy-in with senior leadership that this is something worth investing in. And this tool can help you make the case for that. Also, a lot of organizations who are newer, right? Maybe you're pre-commercial or in launch mode. The question is, where do we start, right? We have grow model, we have some other, we do sit lead, but what else is out there to help us make our people better in terms of coaching? And this is such a great tool because it can really pinpoint some of the opportunities for every organization. So it's a hugely important tool.
Awesome.
Second one, I'll take this one, is our Coaching for Impact study. So the research that we did that powered these 4 behaviors that we just talked about, this is the white paper. So if you're a white paper kind of person, I am. I like to read. If you're a coaching nerd, which I am, this stuff is great, right? Because it really talks about the nuts and bolts, the numbers behind what we talked about. and also provides a lot of examples too. So there are some best practices in the latter part of that. And if you would like this, again, just take a shot of the QR code, go to the website, and then in the comments section, if you want the white paper or just put tool number 2, you can also put in your email, and we can get some therapeutic best practices for your organization to really help you start that conversation around coaching. And then the last tools, and tool number 3 is this should be just called It Works. This is a case study of an organization we've been working with for quite a while. We've been working with them now for 5 years, but we really had original goal to impact their business within 18 months. That was the original goal. And the net of it is it does. We started out by looking at how really at coaching effectiveness at the time, where were the opportunities to grow, really instilling first, second line managers, sales leaders around the importance of the 4 behaviors that we talked about, and then track the results, track the market share, track sales productivity. Really tells a great story of how practical solutions can have a huge impact on any size organization.
Awesome. So as we close today's session, let's just take a moment to reflect out. If you can maybe flip to the next slide. So obviously the life sciences industry is undergoing massive change, from pricing pressures to AI innovations to new sales models, consolidation, and navigating these changes successfully. Coaching is no longer a nice to have, it's essential.
Yeah. By
focusing on the right skills, setting clear goals, embedding coaching into your culture, you can drive not only performance, but also long-term growth. So really, we do actually have some questions here, Ed, in the chat we can get to. But sure, maybe before we close, any final words of advice, Ed, before we move to Q&A?
Well, yeah, I have 2 words. Thank you. Thank you to you, Dario. Thank you to everybody who took the time to be part of this. And if you snap the QR code, if you want the resources, great. My contact information is on this slide. Please feel free to use it liberally. If you want to just have a thought partner around this, do some whiteboarding sessions, no commitment necessary. As I said, I love talking about it. And if you just want a thought partner on something that you want to do with your team, feel free to reach out anytime.
Great. So just looking at some of the questions here in the chat, the first one, this is from Jorge. What are the metrics to measure the value of coaching? So I think you just recently sort of alluded to this, but Ed, how would you answer that question?
Well, there's a lot of things that you can look at. So if you look at the coaching itself, when we talk about coaching effectiveness, we're really talking about 3 things. So we're looking at the consistency of coaching. So are people really meeting the expectations for the frequency of coaching in the organization? Second thing is, are people focused on skills that support strategy, right? That's a big one. And that's something that you can definitely track. And then you can really get into the weeds in terms of what they're focusing on, how they're rating people. But what you want to do through that is make sure that people are coaching to the right skills and are really seeing the levels of proficiency clearly. Another one is that we haven't talked about at all is coaching quality. Coaching quality is a huge driver of performance, and that is also measurable. So within growing people's ability to coach, that's the first part. The second part is you can really look at a lot of things and these are just client reported, things like sales productivity. We have measured market share. We have measured business growth. We have looked at things like engagement and retention, things like accountability from a health index. So really depending on the needs and the values of an organization, you can point better coaching to a lot of different things, whether it's dollars and cents or volume, or even something like organizational health metrics.
Yep, awesome. This is kind of a comment here from Anthony. I think buy-in from senior leadership might be tied to ROI analysis. And I would say absolutely in your case, Ed, where we're kind of tying it to the strategic priorities of the organization and making sure that the coaching is aligned to support that, I think really helps to get senior leaders bought into it.
Yeah. Senior leaders buy in when they know that you are supporting the strategies that they have helped develop, right? That's number one. The second thing is you got to show, right? Senior leaders need to see that this has at least a track record of making an impact. And if that's the case, I saw a lot of people had put that down as an issue they want to start to, or might be an impediment to a coaching program. We should strategize, right? We have a lot of data that talks about, we shared one success story here, but we have probably a dozen of organizations that have shared their data with us. And it really helps clients make that case to senior leaders that this is something worth investing in. Because one thing I will say is a lot of senior leaders will say, yeah, coaching matters. But then when push comes to shove and they need to invest in it, like, oh, wait, but if we can show them a little bit of evidence, it goes a long way.
Yep, for sure. Another comment here from David. Our people are really senior and experienced. They don't need to be coached. That's one we haven't heard before, right, Ed?
Never heard that one before at all. I would gently push back, David, and say that the theme today is really about the changing marketplace. And people who have been successful and have been senior and are still in the industry doing well, you can't really take that for granted. You need to continually develop people. And if you spend the time to really think about, okay, are there some themes that, we look at across our field teams, are there things that people can get better at? Will we be able to grow, share, and create momentum in our growth if we're able to isolate even a handful of skills that people can grow on? Those are the ones that are worth coaching to. Everybody who is going to be successful is going to be committed to future growth.
Some great questions. Yeah, any final questions, gang? Otherwise, I think it's been great having you here. We can wrap things up. Ed, final comments?
No, again, I just reiterate my thanks to you, Dario. You worked so hard to bring this together, and thanks to everybody. Good luck. It's crunch time. I looked at my calendar today. It's 3 months till Christmas, which means you have 3 months your budget and your plan together for next year. So
it's great.
Yeah, good. Best of luck.
Okay, everybody. Thanks so much, and we will follow up with the deliverables. All the best, everybody.